Welcome, I'm Tom Jones. Welcome to another free art lesson. I'm going to explore doing rocks for you this time. I hope you'll stay with me. I want to show you an easy way to approach doing rocks. I'm going to start in my palette with some colors. I'm going to use some yellow ochre and some burnt sienna, and we're going to do a little bit of a light underpainting on this particular area where I've got a sketch of rocks. From there, we're going to take a moment, we'll dry it with a hair dryer. Then what we'll do is we'll come back in and we'll add some darks to that area and some grass area to anchor these rocks, and I'll show you in a couple of steps how easy it is to do rocks. Now keep in mind there are many different types of rocks. We'll explore individual rocks that are sort of laying in a field in this case, but as you know there are larger rock areas and so forth. We'll do that in another episode for you. But stay with me. Let me show you how we approach this scene. I'm going to take my 1-inch flat brush and I'm going to apply just a little bit of my gold ochre to these rocks. Now I'd like you to notice that number one, I left a lot of white space. I just drug that particular color across the area of rocks. I'm not even worried about lines. Don't worry about staying inside the lines. That's not what we're looking for here. I'm going to switch color now. I'm going to go maybe to a little bit of my sienna color. And then we'll go ahead and we'll change color, a little variety of colors. See how interesting that is? Again, leaving a lot of white space. In addition to that, we've changed color and we're just not worrying about those lines again. I'm going to change color again. Let me go ahead and clean out my brush. In this case, we'll add maybe just a touch of some of our rose color and a little touch of maybe some blue. We'll get the color just slightly darker, but not too dark. We want another little color change going on. See how I've changed color again by adding just a touch of blue into my rose color. We've got another interesting color change going on again. See how simple that was? Now, you might say, well, that doesn't look much like rocks to me. Guess what? It's not supposed to. All we're doing is we're putting an underpainting or some color down, some fresh color, keeping it nice and light and nice and fresh looking. Now we'll take a moment, we'll dry this with a hair dryer, then we'll come back, put some darks in order to identify those rocks, and then we'll anchor the entire scene with some grass. So stay with me while I take time to dry this particular scene. Now that I've taken time to dry this particular scene, and let me remind you, it's important that if you're going to dry this, if you're painting along with me, make sure that you dry this completely. The reason for that is when I add my darks, if it's not dry, then the dark colors will simply blend in with the lighter colors and I won't have an edge to identify where the rocks are. So make sure it's dry. Now I'm going to come back with my 3/4 inch flat brush and I want a little bit darker color. So I'm going to stay with my darker range of colors and I'm going to simply come in and add a darker side to a couple of the rocks, and watch what I do now. Now again, you'll want to practice this. You may have to do it several times in order to get it exactly the way you want, but don't be afraid. Go ahead and practice. Now what I'm going to do after I've added the dark is I've cleaned out my brush. It's just water. I'm going to soften a little bit of the edge of some of those areas of rock where I put the dark color on the particular rocks. Now I'm going to come back in and I'll do a few more rocks and you'll see what's happening here. I'm going to come in with a third layer of rock or darks in a few minutes, but let me go ahead and add in some of these darks now to separate some of these rocks. Again, clean out my brush, just water on my brush. Take a tissue just in case you're not sure, and then go ahead and soften the edge just a little bit more. You'll start to see these rocks come alive for you. You start to see the shapes of the rocks, in other words. Watch what happens here. More darks. Mix a little more color. I've got maybe a little too light, a little bit more dark on the sides of the rocks. Now just do it to one side. Don't outline your rocks. I'm just putting the dark on one side and then blending. That's all I'm doing. Same thing down here on a couple of rocks. Darks, darks, darks. Clean your brush out with just water. Soften a couple of edges. Go back and get some more color. Add some dark. Let me mix just a little more color in the palette. A little more dark on a couple of rocks. And pretty soon I'm going to show you, I may have to dry this one more time, so stay with me. And then what we'll do is we'll add just a couple more darks in there, and then the rocks will start to pop out, and then we can come in and put the green in there around it, the grass. Let me take one more moment. I'm going to dry this just one more time. Now again, I've dried this completely, and I would suggest that you do the same. I'm going to come in and add just a few more darks to some of the rocks to identify them a little bit more. This time I'm going to use my number 8 round brush though. So I'm going to mix more color, get some nice rich darks going on here in my palette. So I'm mixing a little burnt sienna, a little bit of my ultramarine blue deep, a little bit of my quinacridone rose to get a nice interesting dark. I'm going to come back to the rock areas and then just take a few more of these rocks and just identify them a little more with even stronger darks. Now you'll notice that I'm always mixing fresh darks, or fresh color I should say, in my palette. The reason for that is I want my colors to stay nice and bright and fresh. If you're not continually mixing fresh color in your palette, then your colors can get a little dull and you don't want that. All right, let me soften a couple more edges on these particular rocks. Now this doesn't have to be exact. You're not staying inside the lines. This is not a paint by the numbers thing. So make sure that you're just adding a few darks to a couple of edges of your rocks. And again, don't worry about staying in the lines, because when we put the greens and the other colors around it, all of this is going to come into play for you. I've often said that many times when people paint, if they're starting out painting, newcomers to painting, is they want the painting to be finished in the first 15 minutes. And realistically, a painting is not finished in the first 15 minutes. It's finished in the last 15 minutes. So in the first 15 minutes, you're basically just getting started laying out some color. And it takes a while. You have to go through all of that process of the painting process to get to the end result. You got to just remember that it's a lengthy process, and stay with it. Once you start your painting, don't give up. Stay with it all the way to the finish. 9 times out of 10, you're going to love the results. Now, let me just make sure. It's sort of like starting out at college. When you first start, it seems like the end result is a long way away. But if you stay with it, the results will pay off for you. You all know that. Now, see how the rocks are starting to separate now by adding these darks. A couple little touches here and there with some more darks, and we'll basically have it. Takes on the look of rocks pretty quickly once you start putting those darks in. Okay? Now, I'm going to come in and start putting the green area around it, the green area being the earth, the grass, etc. And you'll start to see the entire process unfold here. Now, let me start with a 3/4 inch brush. I'm going to start at the back side over here with a lighter color. So I'll pick up maybe a lighter value of some of my lighter green, and I'll pick up a little bit of my, let's say, ochre, and put a little of that color in. Now, see how I'm coming around the edge of where the rocks are. See how this is called negative painting. In other words, I'm painting the spot or the space around where I want those particular rocks to be showcased. And then just pull the color away. See how I'm doing that? Come back, get a little bit more of that color. Watch how I paint across the top. I hope you can see that. I'm painting across the top of that particular rock, like so, and around this one. And then voila, there are the tops of the rocks. See that? Let me add a little more dark into that one area, just to highlight it just a little bit more. And then again, pull the color away. You'll notice that I've left the white. Remember, I talked about leaving the white, so you want to make sure you do that. Add in some more color. Come around the edge of where the rocks are again. Pull the color away. All of a sudden, you're starting to see how those rocks are starting to anchor now. Come back in here and add just a little bit more of the green. I'll continue on all the way around. I want to complete this because I want you to see exactly how these rocks become anchored now. Come back around, just a little bit more around the edge of the rocks. Again, just take your brush, pull the color away. Now watch what I can do. I can take a spray bottle with some color in it. And this is regular paint, and these little bottles are going to shoot dots. See how that's happening? I can throw in some dots to create some texture in my grass area. See how I'm doing that? Isn't that fun? So you can have a lot of fun with it. That's one color. I can come back and go with a darker green. I can use the hooker green deep. The lighter green is a mixture of my permanent green and my lemon yellow. That's how I got that light green. But see how much fun it is? You can have a lot of fun with this. Now, I want to leave some of those dots, but in some cases, I may want to come in and just use a brush and have a brush a stroke area in here, like so. Just this area here, I might want to use a paintbrush rather than the spray bottle up closer to the rocks in order to create that edge is the reason I'm saying that. See how we've done that? Pull some of this away, again, leaving some of those dots up front for a little texture. And you'll notice also that I'm doing some color changes. It's not just all one green. Here I've thrown some ochre into the gold or yellow ochre into the scene, light green, dark green, even a little blue into the scene. So I'm giving a lot of variety to the look of the grass as well, as I did with the rocks. Okay, bring this color back around again. Change color once more, so I have a little variety of color going on. And pretty soon you've got an area of rocks laying in the field like so. Now, another little thing that I'll do is I'll come in and I'll grab a little bit of, I have a turquoise blue here. And I like to use my turquoise blue because it makes a wonderful shadow color. And I can come in if I want to punch up a little bit more of the darker areas. Sometimes I'll use a little bit of my turquoise blue to do that. See how intense that color is? How I can get that wonderful, interesting, dark. I don't want to do it necessarily in the back area, but I may want to do it up front here just to get a little more impact in this area up in the front area where the rocks are. See how that shows up the rocks now? By just adding a little bit of that turquoise, all of a sudden, this thing really starts to pop. See the difference on it? Let's just review. I did a little sketch of some rocks. I put down a little bit of color, in this case some yellow ochre, then I changed to a little bit of my burnt sienna, then I added a little bit of my quinacridone rose and a little bit of my ultramarine blue deep, and that was my underpainting. After that, I dry it. Then I go in and add just a suggestion of some darks on a few rocks. Dry it again, and then what I do is I come back in and do the green area around, meaning the grass. Then what I'll do is take and punch up just a little bit more dark using some turquoise blue in this case. Now, I could dry this and come in and put some samples of some taller grass in here, and I might do that for you just to complete this. So let's go ahead and take just a minute, we'll do that. I'll dry it first, and then that will bring this whole thing alive for you. All right, now what I want to do, this is completely dry, and it's important that it be dry. I'm going to take my script brush in this case. This is the one with the longer, has the longer hairs on it, comes to a nice point, has a nice fat body, and I'm going to go ahead and put in some taller grasses. This will help identify this even more. All I'm going to do is just put in a suggestion of some taller grasses, and what this will do is that it will give the illusion of that this is forward and this part is further back. So it's a little perspective thing. So it's just a little bit of grass, look of tall grasses in here. That's all I'm doing. Just a few more. And that will complete this particular lesson plan. A few leaves or whatever off the edge of the grass doesn't hurt. And that's how simple it is. So all we've done is we've done an area of rocks, put some grasses around it. It sort of anchors the entire painting a little bit more. I hope you've enjoyed this particular demonstration on rocks. I hope you'll practice this at home. Thanks again for watching. I'm Tom Jones. Hope to see you again soon.